All right, y'all. Welcome to episode 35 of Stars Board. Our guest is Michael Potts, and he's a veteran actor of stage and screen, and he's currently starring as Slow Drag in the Netflix adaptation of Ma Rainey's Black Bottom by August Wilson. And on Broadway, he's originated the roles of Principal Hawkins in the Prom, Mafala Hatimbi in the Book of Mormon, and he starred alongside Denzel Washington in the Iceman Cometh on Broadway, and I saw him myself in Jitney. We're going to talk about that because first preview, saw your first preview.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, I know what you're thinking. And very quickly, your television credits: True Detective, The Wire, and coming up, you've found work during this. You're going to be joining the season 2 cast of Prodigal Son on Fox. How about that, man?
Yeah, I know. Wow, that sounds good. I want that guy's
Doesn't
career.
it? That's but yeah, I saw you in Jitney. I saw the very first preview, and
Wow.
yeah, it was majestic to watch because
Okay.
right
Is that the
away,
one where we tipped that we knocked the checkerboard over? Is that it?
that's exactly what happened. And y'all just kept going. Because what else are you gonna do?
Yes, it's live.
There was some magic to that. That was
Yeah.
the first August Wilson play I saw on Broadway in my
Wow.
life.
Okay.
So
Okay.
that was very
Well,
exciting.
that's a good one. That's a good
Yeah.
one to see. That's a good entry.
Oh, for
It's a
sure.
good gateway drug to August Wilson.
Yeah, it's good. It's great when Broadway is the gateway for like all the right stories. It's like
Yep.
I love
Yeah.
when it
Yeah.
lines up like that. So tell us what Ma Rainey is about, and tell us about who you play.
Well, Ma Rainey is about a recording session. It takes place in one day, over the course of one day in Chicago in the summer of 1927. And it's basically a story of power dynamics between the white record establishment and white power establishment. Ma, as the artist, struggling for her place in the world and her worth. And she's butting heads with them. And then she's also butting heads with this young upstart trumpet player who's looking towards the future and who he wants to be a star himself and has his own band and his own ways of looking at the world. And so it examines these interpersonal dynamics and conflicts, as well as the part played by Chadwick Boseman and Ma Rainey as well, their inner conflicts as well.
Absolutely. And tell us about Slow Drag, who's bass player in the band, right?
Yeah, Slow Drag. Yeah, he's the bass player for the band. Like a bass player, he tries to keep the time. Slow Drag is, he's about a good time. One of his lines is, "Like good times is what makes life worth living." So you're always going to see Slow Drag is going to find the party. If he can't find one, he'll make one.
Yeah.
He's about, let's get the work done. Let's be conscientious. Let's do it. Get out of here so we can go back to having fun and enjoying our lives. And he tries to inject a lot of humor so that nobody in the room takes themselves too seriously.
And that's really, I'll tell you, I read the play, but right before I watched the movie. And I really made that choice because I know that Wilson's text, I know of any text in a play that you want to see what it's like before it is brought into a machine of any sort, whether it be Broadway or like commercial off Broadway or Netflix. And I wanted to see what the purity of the story was, and to see the purity and hear the rhythm of it. And this is the only play in the century cycle of August Wilson's plays about the Black consciousness, and it takes place in Chicago. It's the only one that takes place not in Pittsburgh, right?
Yes, the only one that takes place outside of Pittsburgh, and the only one who deals with an actual person who existed, Ma Rainey.
Yeah.
So an actual celebrity that people would or should know about. Yeah, so it's very unique in that sense.
And from what I see about this play, for me, it's about how artists, and specifically Black artists, they have to protect their voice from white people in this industry that devalue them by commodifying and appropriating their work. That's
right.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's precisely what went on. They didn't own the rights to their music. The record companies did. Once they signed that release, it belonged to the record company. So you got paid, as Ma say. Once they get my voice in the machines, it's like I'm some whore in the street. They just roll over and put on their pants, and that's really what it was. And so you did, and I think artists still do. I mean, I just recently, you had the Weeknd saying, Grammys are corrupt,
Yeah.
which was trending on Twitter for a bit. And then I remember reading a story just recently about Nile Rodgers, who's before your time.
What about Nile
of the band,
Rodgers?
of the band Chic. He was testifying before, I think, the British Arts Council or something like that. And he was talking about artists being shortchanged in the streaming platform, in the streaming world, that they're not being paid fairly for their music. So the struggle goes on. The struggle goes on. Also, I want to go back to the previous question. I forgot another first about the plays that Ma Rainey is August Wilson's first openly LGBTQ character as well.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that is a wonderful thing, because
Yeah.
so much of the conversation of the past couple of years has been like, how do we open up to like authentic, true relationships
Right.
of queer people and put them at the spotlight? And instead of making it about their queerness or their identity, it's about much more than their sexuality. It's about their
Right.
story.
Right. I mean, it's a great thing. It didn't matter. It was no big deal
Right.
to the band at all. I mean, Ma Rainey certainly wasn't the first lesbian or bisexual. She wasn't the only gay person walking around and performing, and so it was no big deal. And I guess when you explain that, you have to wonder why it's such a big deal now. And I know George likes to explain, and he points it out, is that because of the circumstances of racism as we lived back then, we needed one another. We couldn't afford to throw anybody away because we needed each other for protection. And of course now, jump forward to post integration and what have you. We've kind of, and I think August Wilson looks at that, he's always going back to some of what we lost when we left the South, when we left the land. Because this was also 1927, the great migration of Black people from the segregated South to northern cities was happening as well. So this takes place early in that, because it lasted from about 1915 almost to 1973. So we have that. What did we lose when we lost the land? And what he's doing through I think Toledo's character mostly is talking about what has been lost, and part of that was a sense of community and togetherness, so that we have to deal with homophobia now. And so it's a brilliant thing that George says. It doesn't matter that she's lesbian, but in our present times, it's essential that we make it clear that she is, but we don't make it that being all she is. That it really isn't all she is.
Because queer people should recognize that they can hold that power too, especially Black queer people. I mean, in the past 2 years, commercially on Broadway, we've seen A Strange Loop and Fairview and Jeremy Cooper's Ain't No Mo. And we're seeing this rise of like the Black queer identity finally coming to the forefront.
It's brilliant. I love it. And you got Tessa Thompson, and you got Janelle Monáe. So
don't get me started on Janelle Monáe, man.
Lena Waithe. So it's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. Beautiful thing.
And
hopefully more brothers start bringing it out. Yeah. Let's not let the ladies get it all.
Exactly. And what is so great about Ma Rainey is that right now what you could see in this story is that, and through George C. Wolfe's adaptation of it specifically, this whole opening montage. I expected this movie to start like how the play starts. The play starts with the two white guys being like, are we setting up? Are we testing?
Right.
Like now, George C. Wolfe added this beautiful montage that sets the pavement for who the story is actually about, and you could only do that on film. That's the advantage of like a successful adaptation.
Yeah. I mean, that was Ruben Santiago Hudson did the screenplay,
Yeah.
And and so in collaboration with George, they wanted to, I think they both agreed that it needed to start there.
Yeah.
That they didn't, because originally in the play, Ma Rainey doesn't show up until what, page 48?
Yeah. It's like half an hour. It's crazy.
It's called Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, but you don't see her for the first 48 pages or so. So they wanted to make it clear,
Yeah.
her storyline very clear, and also we didn't want to start on a down note, not one of these oh poor me Black stories.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And also the juxtaposition of that opening montage, of that opening, in the great time that Ma and her band were having,
Mhm.
and the popularity and the joy of Black people enjoying, communing and enjoying one another and just having a great time before we got to the heavier stuff. It was a very, very,
Yeah.
very smart thing to do.
Because you need that balance, right? A
Yes.
huge conversation in the theater lately has been how institutional theater has exploited Black trauma. And you
Oh yeah.
can't just exploit Black trauma without the medicine first. The medicine is the joy. And if you don't have the joy, then you can't do the trauma. Otherwise, you're just traumatizing the people in front of you and the Black
All right.
audiences that come to see these stories.
Yeah, but I even think institutionally, the trauma is glossed over. It's treated. It isn't treated with the same weight, the same seriousness. You would never think that there was. You never get the sense that there's mental illness, or even going back to Jitney. I remember a gentleman who had seen the play, a black gentleman who worked for another radio station, and he was interviewing. He was talking about his experience in watching it, and how at intermission, this older white woman came to him, and as he says, it must have been my friendly, open Midwestern face. So she came to him and talked about how great it was and how wonderful. She says, "But I have a question. Why are they so angry?"
Mm.
So there's still something. People still are not understanding or appreciating or getting
Man,
what the
my friends
trauma
go
is.
yeah,
Yeah.
my friends go through all that bullshit when they go see plays. Like my
Yeah.
friend we went to go see We're Gonna Die, which is Young Jean Lee's play, and
Uh-huh.
the protagonist was a Black woman, but it wasn't always a Black woman. But like at this was the choice when Raja Feather Kelly directed to make it that way. And
Yeah.
people started going up to her at the end of this play, and they were like, well, what did you think of it? And it's like, oh my God, this is not, we're not like some like
We're not aliens.
translator.
We're not, but we're not translated, but we're not aliens. I mean, it's the same way you would probably be able to explain it or justify it if it were a white story or a white character. You'd be able to explain that anger.
Yeah.
So it's this, it bothered me sometimes because it almost feels like an easy way of kind of dismissing,
Yeah.
dealing with it is this thing of not wanting to reckon with racism, of always wanting to pretend it's not really there.
Yeah.
So what is it you're angry about? What is it you want?
And that's what
You know?
that is what is so great about George C. Wolfe being part of this project, because
Oh
like
yeah.
time and time again he has chosen projects that like change people's perceptions of what they thought America was supposed to look like. And I'm not just talking about race, I'm talking about like the stories and like the specificity of these stories, like in the normal hard, like putting
Oh
that
yeah.
whole like timeline of like this is how many people are dying, putting like
Hmm.
that live number at that production. That's historic shit. And bringing the music, bringing the
Yeah.
funk, and like talk about
He
working with
always
race.
does that. He always does that. He makes it about, there's always a character. He always finds a way in some character in the telling of his story to tell the story of America too. I mean, he'll talk about in interviews, he talks about Chad Boseman's character, Levy, represents America. He is this
Yeah.
man, this young man with all this genius and all this brilliance who's looking forward to the future, but he's never reconciled it with his tragic past.
Oh fuck, I love that. I didn't. I
He
Wow.
said, that's America. We keep going forward, but we have yet to reckon and atone with the trauma of our past. And so there's going to be some tragedy.
Yeah.
There's going to be tragedy until we deal with.
I think somebody interviewed August Wilson when this came out, and it's this beautiful 27-minute interview. Maybe you've seen it, but basically they ask him like, "You keep writing plays about the past," and he's like, "Because we need to look at our past to like examine our future." And just to say that like Levy there's two schools of thought in this play for me. There's Levy and then there's Ma Rainey. There's Levy, who's ambitious enough to climb the ladder. He hands his music to Sturdivant like not even like half an hour into the fucking show. And then Ma, who walks in there and she's like, you can't have anything. Because as you were saying before, the Great Migration was going on. She could just chill in the South forever. And she had to talk differently in Chicago, because she needed to protect herself. And he is spending money on like shoes and like hitting on her lady, and the outcome is apparent.
He doesn't get it. he thinks he knows. He thinks he can control his future without having to reckon with the past. That's what, and I think that's his tragedy. But yeah, no, working with George, I call him, he's a mad genius. That man is a walking encyclopedia of African-American history and culture. And he's read everything, he's seen everything, he's curated stuff. So he can talk intelligently and articulate on nearly any single subject you want to bring forth. And his vision is always very clear. But the brilliant thing about him is he's collaborative. And here's the thing, you find it, which is very, very rare in theater. He is willing to say, I don't know. He's like, I don't know. Let's just play. Let's see. And he will keep at you. And he wants you to always discover it in the moment. He wants the truth in the moment. Don't come in with anything planned. You did your homework. That's great. Now we're going to come in and find the truth in the moment. Between characters or what's in this scene. I mean, luckily for this movie, we got 2 weeks of rehearsal that he insisted. So we rehearsed it like a play for the first 2 weeks, in this Lithuanian music hall, and we had the set taped out on the floor.
Where did y'all shoot this?
Pittsburgh, shot in Pittsburgh.
Look at that.
So that was, but no, he is a genius, and he keeps at you. And he always has something to contribute. Never gets in the way. He knows how to create a safe space, a place of trust. And that he is not trying to hamstring you or make you look bad. He wants you to look the best you can, and that he's going to help you find the story.
Absolutely. And that is what made this adaptation successful, is the space it was given, and then also like how enclosed this story was too, because that's like a key component of Wilson's writing. It's like putting it in small spaces, right? So that people, and putting like a bunch of characters, like 5 people in a small room, you're gonna get some tension, you're gonna get some collision. And it catalyzes.
And crucible, and it's the thing that George also changed from the play is it's in the winter, but in the movie George said no, it has to be in the summer. It has to be the heat. It has to be oppression of the heat as well, so that we see the sweat, the heat, and they're in a dungeon. I mean, they're down locked in this small dungeon, And shout out to Mark Ricker for that set design as well. That tiny space that we had to inhabit, and it all worked.
Yeah, that first shot where you walk into that room and like you're just looking up and you're like, wow, it just feels so fucking claustrophobic. It's perfect.
Yeah, it was. We spent a lot of hours in that room.
Oh God, really?
Ooh, the first day we went to see it, I was like, oh no. We're gonna be in here for the next 2 weeks. Oh no.
So talk to me about like working with Colman Domingo, who has just been on fire lately. I just saw him in
he is. Isn't he having a year?
Isn't
he having a year? Glynn had a year. Glynn is not hurting either. He's having a year as well after Fargo, and he won the Emmy last year, if I'm not mistaken. So he's having a year. No, it goes back to what you said. And everyone had that same attitude coming in. We felt protective of what we were doing. So egos were left outside. There was no ego walking into the room. We did not make ourselves the event. The event was Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. That was the event, was August Wilson's story. And we were very, very protective of that and gave ourselves over to that. And so it created this kind of camaraderie from the very beginning. I mean, when we first got there, even during rehearsals, we, Colman organized us. We all went out to dinner together just to get to know each other first, to talk a little bit before we all locked away in our various hotel rooms and things like that.
Right.
To get comfortable, we just spent hours just talking and laughing. The restaurant had long closed, and they stayed because, there's Viola Davis and there's Chadwick Boseman.
Oh, so they just essential workers, huh?
They just let us sit there. I think we were there about an hour past closing while they were putting up tables and chairs. And they're like, no, take your time. But it was that kind of thing. And then we continued to do it through the course of shooting, of eating together, drinking together, things like that, and showing who we were and creating this sense of trust, so that when we went in the room, I mean, we were friends, we were brothers, so that you could feel the history of the relationship of all of these people. And everybody brought their A game. Everyone brought their A game. So it's easy when you have that to play off of. What more could you ask for?
Yeah, and I think because there were scholars like Reuben Santiago Hudson and George C. Wolfe like at the top of this, I think everybody knew that you needed people that can bring the history of their work with August Wilson. Because I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, everybody in that show, the major characters, all did August Wilson, like whether it be on Broadway or regionally,
Right. Yeah. Everybody. Yeah. Everyone has had every one of the major characters has had experience with August Wilson.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we knew, we knew.
You knew what needed to happen, and you stepped up to the plate. Yeah.
Yes.
Did you audition for this, by the way, or was this offered to you?
No, I was fortunate enough to get the offer for it. Because, Denzel had seen the Jitney Turman. He was there. He and Pauletta came one night, and I met him after the show, and he was like shaking my hand. Why don't I know you? Why don't I know you? I said, because you Denzel Washington. Why would you know me? Why would you know me?
You don't know who I am.
Yeah, like, why would you? And then, of course, the next season, we did the Iceman together. And that's when we bonded. We bonded on Iceman. And then he started telling me about his plans for bringing all of the American Century, August Wilson's American Century Cycle, his plans to bring them to film, bring all of them. And he was just throwing out stuff and throwing out names. And he threw my name out there. And I'm thinking to myself, I was like, yeah, you just throwing my name out there because I'm here.
Yeah.
Because you're talking to me. That's all right. You don't have to throw my name in there. I'm not going to sit at home holding my breath, hoping that you call. But the hope, of course, inside was, well, maybe later on down the line, when he gets to like 5 or 6 later, I might get a call, or as I joke, I was like, he get to the end and go, who's left? Who's left? And they'll call
me. You should share that wealth. Like it could be. And I think he actually did play this role in the most recent production. Like it could be Stephen McKinley, Henderson every time,
sure.
But there's like there's a massive collective. I think you guys really are a collective of these people that have like really studied and really done your own work outside of Wilson, and then it brings you back in.
Yeah, we're the latest kind of generation to it because there were those, before us from the very beginning when he was first brought to prominence on Broadway and in the theater as a whole. I mean, Stephen McKinley Henderson. We just recently lost the great Anthony Chisholm, who you saw in Jitney as well.
He's so funny,
so much. There's so many. Tommy Hollis, Theresa. There are so many even before us. So we're kind of like the latest generation of Wilsonians, as they call us.
Millennial Wilsonians, I guess.
Pretty much, yeah.
I'm gonna be a millennial, huh?
But I'm not a millennial. I'm a millennial Wilsonian.
No, that's great. And it's funny because Um, I've seen there was this in this interview with Wilson. He talked about how there was all these other portrayals of Black people commercially, like the Cosby Show. That was the dominant ethos of the Black imagination. And he was like, that does not speak for us. That's not our whole experience. That is somebody's experience, but that did not identify with the present. So like examining what that looks like today and looking at like the powerful like Black television icons that create the work, like Tyler Perry or like Lena Waithe. Is it, do you think there's still a battle for like the truth of that narrative, or is it like something that could be shared?
I think it is. I think there's still a little bit of a battle because you mentioned Tyler Perry. Tyler Perry is a bit controversial in the Black community. His stories. There are a lot of people in the Black community who don't like his brand of comedy and humor on that side. Though he has a huge audience for it, and he has his whole studio down in Atlanta now, something no other Black person has done. So he has some controversy. I think we're getting to the point of realizing that the field is big enough for many different voices. That number one, we need to get all of our stories out there, not just ones that show us in one particular way, but all the ways that show us authentically, that are not about the white gaze. I think, you go back to Cosby. Cosby was successful because it's predicated upon a white middle class ethos. That's it.
The American dream complex.
This upper middle class. I mean, you could have switched them out for white actors, and it would have been popular. It was just Black people, and then Mr. Cosby would inject, because he was a big fan of jazz and what have you. So he would inject music into it, African American music, the history of that.
Sure.
But it wasn't specifically. It wasn't something you'd look at and go, "Oh yeah, that's Black folks." But it's part of the reason why it was such a huge hit in the country, because it was the white bourgeois ideal in that family. And so what August Wilson was saying, let's look at Black people who aren't doctors and lawyers and have 4 perfect kids.
Right.
Let's deal with, and who don't have just their weekly traumas of people trying to make it through life. Let's deal with real, authentic issues and trauma that have a history in this country, specifically about African American people. So yeah, there are more voices, and I think there's room for all of them as long as they are authentic, as long as they authentically represent our experience.
Do you feel the same way about like Fresh Prince too? And the only reason I ask is like I grew up seeing that show at like 10 o'clock at night, and now it's available, and like everybody's watching that shit now on HBO Max, which I just got on my Roku. Thank you, Roku. Basically that. I mean, the pilot episode is fascinating to me because you see this kid from Philadelphia comes into this white bourgeois sort of Black excellence, and you're seeing that tension sort of catalyze. But the only difference is that what's articulated from the James Avery's character, Phil, is that he knows where he comes from, and you could talk about Malcolm X, this younger generation, but I was there, I heard the man speak. Like that's the fundamental difference. So is that still like a level of privilege that he's speaking from in some way, or is that
to a certain extent? And shows like that, you don't knock them because they're aspirational. I mean, that's what they're meant to be. They're aspiring to a life we would all like to have, and I guess that was the whole premise of this kid. It was also a show about class as well. This kid from West Philadelphia, this poor kid from West Philadelphia, in a rough area of West Philadelphia, coming out to California to live with his aunt and uncle who have done well for themselves, and kind of learn that he too can be a part of this, that he can have this, that he doesn't have to be stuck in West Philadelphia. And I think some West Philadelphians might find that insulting, thinking that you be stuck. but the idea that it's aspirational, but it is still, again, aspiring to that bourgeois
Yeah.
ideal. You understand, that white bourgeois ideal.
The white moderate
Right,
complex of some
exactly. And yeah, and Uncle Phil can talk about these things, but it can't be threatening. You understand? It can't be not on network television every week.
I hear you, man. Yeah.
It's not, Uncle Phil can't be threatening. It can't be threat. And so the comedy, and that's why it's a sitcom, because the comedy diffuses and it makes the majority audience, which is white, feel comfortable and relatable because of the aesthetic of the show.
Fair enough.
And so I think that's what we're fighting against now. As I said, it's that thing about, let's stop making things from the, let these that's what everyone's asking Hollywood to do, the white gaze. There was so much controversy around Green Book. I mean, no more white savior movies, no more white savior stories, no more white gaze stories.
I've never seen like a collective group of people around me more disappointed than seeing Green Book, and like everybody around me is just like,
I wouldn't watch it. I didn't watch it. I didn't watch it. And the idea that you would call it Green Book and not actually deal with what the Green Book was really about.
Mm-hmm.
that you sort of gloss over that. It had some issues. That made us mad. Some of us very angry.
Yeah.
About this white guy from this white Italian guy goes and is protecting this black man in the South. Like,
yeah. And the press around it was like a mess too.
Yeah.
It was just a whole ordeal.
Yeah.
One of the other things I forgot to ask you about, and I would be remiss not to, because like, you worked with Chadwick on his last movie, and I'm curious if you had any fond memories or anything you learned from him on that experience.
Well, I think we all learned the idea of grace and generosity, because he was that to a fault when he walked into a room. And again, it's like, because I remember that first night and that first week we were all there, and we had that dinner. We met at this restaurant. I found out Chad had walked from his hotel. He was just walked. I'm going in my mind, you walked? Is what we got? You walked on the
King
street
of Wakanda just walks down the street, man.
Do you know? It's kind of the thing of, do you know who you are? But he was unfazed by that. That wasn't a big deal to him. And Viola says it. She says he never made his presence the event, and it wasn't. He came in as a consummate professional. And I just remember, he had a really kind of sly sense of humor in the way he could cut his eyes at you, and then this big grin would come on his face. That sort of thing was always beautiful. He has a line in that he says to my character, Slow Drag, when we're pretending we're going to do his version of Ma's song. And I say, hold on, let me fix one of the strings on my bass is come undone. It's coming loose. And he goes, if you any kind of musician, you take better care of your instrument. And so that became a running joke on set. If anybody made a mistake about anything, and then there was one day on set, he dropped the mouthpiece to his trumpet. And in the silence, you just hear, if you was any kind of musician. And he doubled over. He closed his eyes, doubled over, and got up laughing. He's like, you got me. You got me. He said, yep, we got you. So, I mean, he was that. He was a guy. He was a guy. He was your friend. He was your colleague. He was your brother. That's who he was. I mean, yeah. And gave everything. Gave every single thing.
Yeah.
One more. Give me one more. He was never satisfied. Just give me one more. He would tell George. George would come in and go, I got it. What do you want? You want to do another one? I got what I need. More than he said, give me one more. One more. I'm like, Chad, we've done this 12 times, man. He's like, one more. Just give me one more.
The amount of things he was able to do in the time he was alive is superb.
Mm-hmm.
He was always worried about being stuck in like the biopic sort of way. That's a lot of things that I heard in his interviews. He was like, you really want to do that again? And it's like, no, these stories are each unique in their own way. And And if I have the opportunity to do this, like looking back at where I was like 20 years ago, like I would be dying to do this. So
Right.
I
Yeah.
understand that. I don't know. Your like whole entire career is like incredibly fascinating to me. Like this stems back 30 years, right? I don't know if you know this.
Yeah.
There's a website called abouttheartist.com.
No.
And we have our earliest thing is the death of the last black man in the whole entire world in 1992.
Whoa.
You got 28 years of acting recorded under your belt on the stage. And we got a Randy Newman's Faust that like I have to ask you about, because there's some crazy players in that too. At La Jolla in 1995, just a couple months
That's
after I was
right.
born. Bellamy Young,
Oh,
Fritz
after you were
Seaver.
born.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Go on.
And Daphne Rubin Vega,
Yes. Yeah.
Sherry Renee Scott. These are incredible people. How did you get tied up in this with Michael Greif?
Well, because with Michael Greif, I had done the original workshop of Rent.
That's crazy.
That's
Insane.
how I.
You were the original
That's how I
Benny,
got.
right?
I was the original Benny. That's how I got tied up with Michael Greif, and you know, I guess we hit it off as director and actor. He was a fan of my work. I was a fan of his, and so I continued to work with him. I also sometimes look back on it and go, "Yeah, that's why you brought me out Randy Newman's Faust, because you know I'm not going to be going with Rent to Broadway. So this is your gimme. You trying to pay me back for not taking me to Broadway with Rent." And then we worked together after that. Grey Gardens, a number of things, even after that. So he's another smart, brilliant director that you can sit down and actually have an intelligent conversation about. Who gets it? Who gets it?
I wanted to ask you about the Book of Mormon, man, because that show has held different places in my life. Like it was the first play, last musical I saw before I went off to college, and it was the first time I like could actually see myself on stage. I was a bit of a bigger kid at that time, and I was like, wow, there's a place for me. And the and the idea of like seeing you know, these two very different environments like sort of colliding, and you know, like very in that Wilson fashion almost, but like it was wonderful. So how did you get tied up in the Book of Mormon? How'd you get involved?
I got a call about a workshop, I think. How did that happen? I know Bobby Lopez had known me from when he used to be an intern at Playwrights Horizon. So I think he may have seen me in something off Broadway and knew my work and brought my name up. And so they asked me to come in and audition for it. I mean, it's an interesting thing. I said yes to go in and audition for Book of Mormon because I was having an issue. Me and my manager got into a big thing because I refused to go in for Scottsboro Boys. Talk about a link between Colman and myself. I didn't want to go in for Scottsboro. I said, no, I'm not going in for Scottsboro Boys.
Why didn't you want to go in for Scottsboro Boys?
Because I didn't think it was it's not going to run. You know, as I said, it's not going to run. White people are not going to travel all over the country to pay $200 to be told how bad they are. How bad they were to Black people. It's not going to run. And I said, it's brilliant. I know it is. And I said, and if you don't handle it well, you're going to get in a lot of trouble with Black folk. If the producers don't handle how you're really going to, you're going to put a minstrel show on stage. You better be careful and know what you're doing. And I think those producers found themselves in a lot of hot water because they didn't handle it correctly. But basically 2 days later, the audition came in asking me to come in for Book of Mormon. And I literally went, sure.
Well,
because in my mind, I'm going, the provenance of it was, I mean, come on, this is Trey Parker, Matt Stone, this is Bobby Lopez. Everybody and their mama is going to be trying to get into this. I don't have to worry about getting it because everybody in musical theater will be there. I'll go and I'll have a good time. I'll thank them and they'll hire somebody else. And also at the time, I was working on a play that Tony Kushner had written, and he had written a part in it for me, Intelligent Homosexual.
For the Very quick question about that.
Yeah.
I found a bootleg of that a very long time ago, and I have been
Wow.
desperately looking for the script for it. It is
Now,
like
is that
nowhere
from the is that bootleg from the New York production or from the Guthrie?
from the Guthrie, I think.
Okay, good. Yeah, all right.
That's the one. That's the good one.
That's the better one. Yeah, that's the
Okay,
good one.
good, good, good.
That's the good one. Yeah.
That's great. But yeah, I read a whole study guide about Tony Kushner wrote this play about a patriarch giving up his like brownstone in Brooklyn or something like that, right?
Hmm.
And he wrote a like 150-year like family like Bible before the play even starts. And I was in college, so I was like tantalized by this. The like
Oh,
the
that's Tony. That's Tony. I remember, speaking of Michael Greif, who also directed that. Again, there was another
look at that.
collaboration with Michael Greif. And I remember we were teching a scene that Tony hadn't written yet. Tony had basically given Michael the outlines for the scene, what he was writing. So he was in a conference room writing a scene we were teching.
Oh man.
And then he would send it in, warm pages in, for us to do it because he couldn't stop writing. I mean, he just wrote constantly. That mind, I don't know how he holds all of that in one brain. It's extraordinary. The wrinkles in his brain must be innumerable. You probably can't count them because he knows so freaking much.
The Book of Mormon. So
Yes, that's it. Back to the
get
Book of
this
Mormon.
part,
Yeah.
and
Uh-huh.
what do rehearsals start to look like for this show? When do you get Asadiga Ibowai? When does that cross here? Yeah.
Oh, actually, I got that on my callback, which I wasn't expecting. Uh, Me and another actor, and they were guarding it very, very closely. They didn't want it to get out, and so they would only show it to you just before, the night before they sent it. They said, "We
Yeah.
understand you may not want to sing this, blah 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 blah." And I remember howling. I said, "You actually gonna say this on Broadway? you, you actually wrote this, and you're gonna sing it on Broadway?" And I thought about it. I said, "Well, if you if you got the nerve, then I need to grow a pair so I can sing it." And
Wow.
and that's what it was. I mean, it was just that thing of putting that together. And I know everyone was very nervous about it, but the response to it was kind of insane. I
Oh
remember
yeah.
when we sang it, we had to hold the full 2 minutes at least because people would not stop. They're just pandemonium.
Yeah.
It was
Because
like,
nobody's heard that
and
shit
I'm
before.
frozen like this because I'm going, we can't go on because I can't hear the orchestra. I can't hear the orchestra because y'all are
Mhm.
screaming. So we're all frozen, and everybody on stage behind me is doing this, and they start laughing. So
That's
no,
amazing.
this was a fun. I mean, you've seen Josh Gad.
Yeah.
He's a nut. It was
It's
so
iconic.
much fun. They were crazy. That was so
Reynolds,
much
Rory
fun.
O'Malley, Nikki Dent.
Reynolds, Rory, and people I still see and am in touch with. Just an astonishingly brilliant bunch of
Yeah.
of of performers.
Yeah. And I've been in that audition room about 5 times.
Oh, you have?
5 callbacks, man. It's like never gonna. It's gonna take me because it's already a machine, right? So it's gonna take me like years, but it's fine,
Keep
honestly.
coming back. When Broadway comes back, when they come back, go in there.
Let's see. It's funny though too because since June, a lot of people have been like questioning things about like how the ownership of storytelling and all that. And this,
Hmm.
when I had Asmaret Geber McKell, who I think was like your original dance captain, maybe or something like
Yes,
that.
she was. Yes, she
Um,
was.
how do you think Book of Mormon has aged? Because that's sort of the discussion that has been starting to go. Do you think like it would need
She's
to
right.
age?
It hasn't. It didn't age well, and fortunately for the people who are going to do it later, Trey and Matt were totally open to that, and they understood it, and they rewrote it.
Mm.
They've been rewriting parts of it.
Happy.
They really have. They really listened to. There were concerns before shutdown. There were concerns about the current cast on Broadway.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, and it was always from the beginning. There were people who were saying it's racist. It's racist towards the Africans, and I think there was a lack of understanding about that, and there may have been a lack of sensitivity as to how some audience members. I mean, a minority of them, truly most Black people came in there, they understood, they got it. My friends who our Africans themselves came in
Mm-hmm.
and understood it and laughed their asses off because they say, these are no Africans. They're not meant to be.
Right.
They're the white people's idea, ridiculous notion, absurdist notion of what Africans are, is what
Mm-hmm.
we're laughing at. But for the audience member, black, white, or otherwise, not sophisticated enough to get that, you have to address it. And it
For sure.
wasn't. And it wasn't addressed in a forthright and honest way. And then there were discussions about it. There were discussions about it earlier this year among some of current cast and original cast got involved. And, we had one of those big Zoom meetings, and Matt and Trey said, you're right. And in light of what's going on in the country right now and everything else, we need to fix this.
Absolutely.
So they
And
did.
that's so
they
wonderful.
did.
You don't
Yeah.
get that either. They're like Viacom babies, right? Like they're protected. And
Yeah.
the fact that they're choosing to change, like
Yeah.
that is a miracle in itself. But
Yeah.
what I
Bobby
did really,
too. Yeah. Bobby was
and Bobby
very
as well.
apologetic about it. He says, I knew, and I should have said something. We should have been more forthright about it. Yeah. It was a great meeting. It's a great meeting.
Don't you love those Zoom meetings that like happen to be very
Yeah.
productive? There's an art to
Yes.
Zoom now, like
Mm.
knowing when to talk and then walk away. You gotta make a point, like you just power through it, keep
Yeah.
talking, but like somebody will cut you off eventually.
Yes. Yeah, we've been learning that in our Zoom interviews we've been doing, those kinds of things for the movie, for all this promotion. When
Can't
everybody's on a
imagine.
different level of internet connection, that kind of thing. So it's been interesting.
I do hope that the message that I got from Book of Mormon, which like spoke to me because I'm a Jew, right? And I've always had like these, qualms about like my parents keeping kosher stuff separate and all
Hmm.
that. And it's like, why is it important? And like, or the strictness of my religion, and that speaks to the strictness of any religion.
Yeah.
And it's like, do we take these words so literally? And the I don't know why it took a fucking musical for it to click, but I think either you or another character was like, oh, he's not being serious about fucking the frogs. It's just part of the story. You don't take it seriously. And I was like, oh man, okay. So it's
It's
about the
like,
respect of community.
yes, we understood. No, but yet I think it was Asmaret. Asmaret's character is the one who kind of, she says, nobody fucks a frog. That's fucking stupid. You can't fuck a frog. That's fucking stupid. Fucking stupid. So it wasn't about that. It's like he came and gave us a fresh story. We know, we've heard them all, but at least he's original. We get the general idea what religion is supposed to be, but at least he came in with something incredibly original. And he's trying, and he respects, and it is, you respected the people.
Yeah. It's a beautiful thing dramatically to see how somebody's flaws turn into their greatest strength, isn't it?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
That's a
And we
great thing
let
about
him,
it.
and we weigh in on it. That's the thing. They didn't know. It's a really clever thing about, black folks know. That's the thing y'all need to know. We know. A
Oh,
lot
yeah.
of time we play along. We're playing along with you, but we know.
So now you have this Prodigal Son on Fox coming up, right?
Yeah,
This is
yeah.
exciting.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I don't know what they're going to do with him. I've shot 2 episodes of it. He could be a very interesting character. He could,
He could.
if they choose to write him.
Oh, yikes.
I
Zoinks.
mean, that's what I'll say. I mean, TV has a habit of, certain television has a habit of doing that. They want you, they want you, they want you. We really want you. And then you get there and you go, what, for this? And so so it becomes a yes, and I'm here.
You're
I'm
waiting for the
here.
other shoe to drop.
You said you wanted me, which tells me that you know my work, you know the quality and caliber of my work. So, we'll see. Sometimes I begin to feel that when I saw that little and they didn't give me a heads up about it. I had no idea that it was going to pop up on Deadline and they're going to start advertising that Christian Borle and myself. And I started laughing. I said, I wonder if that has anything to do with me being in a movie that has Oscar buzz right now. Mm-hmm. That were I not in Ma Rainey right now, maybe the press release would have just been about Christian Borle.
I don't know, Michael. You're sitting next to Christian Borle, Tony Award winner Christian Borle from
That's my point. If I wasn't in Ma Rainey, there would be no reason to mention my name. It's Christian Borle, for God's sake.
No.
You don't need to do it about me. You got him.
These are good problems to have, though.
They are lovely problems to have. They're lovely problems to have.
But you still got to protect yourself. It all goes back to Ma Rainey, right?
It's all about protecting yourself. So, yeah, I get very careful about that. And so it's nice that they put it out there, but I know they would like to want me to make a bigger deal about it, but I'm a wait and see right now.
Good. Good for you.
I'm not gonna blow you up. I'm not gonna, because it gets to the longer conversation about the industry having to change. You understand? And the issues in the industry. You can't just write this stock character and not consider who you're giving it to and not try to fill it and expect me to be okay about it.
Yeah, you don't give a fucking Wilson historian a
yes, you know what I do. You know what I do, and so write me something to sink my teeth into. If not, then that's fine. I'll go somewhere else.
Wonderful. Last question then. Typically, as we end this podcast, we ask all of our theater people, what do they think theater is going to look like when we get back out of this?
Oh, wow. I don't know. Eventually it will get back to what it was before. I believe it's going to take more time because so much revenue has been lost. I really don't know how many performers we've lost to this pandemic. And I'm not talking about dying. I'm talking about who moved on to other things, changing careers. So I especially think about the younger actors who made their living on Broadway, whose names we don't know. So I wonder how many of them will be able to come back. Those of us in theater who are in the middle, we know Patti LuPone, Bernadette Peters, and all the biggies are going to come back. There's always a space for them.
We'll see company when it gets back.
Yeah, they're going to come back. But the younger ones and the ones who are not names, and then those of us in the middle who work all the time, but who are not either one, will we be able to come back? Will producers ask for us to work harder for less money because they've lost so much?
Well, the producing model's changing right now. That's what's exciting about it. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago with the Industry Standard Group. If you've heard about this, it's a group of BIPOC producers who have been working for like the Scott Rudins of the world, and are like, we need to change and question this model, and it's part of that like revolt and age of spin that's happening right now.
I hope so. I hope so, but it won't be easy. As they say, power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did, and it never will. And these people who own these theaters and who've been producing and making money off of it it's going to be difficult for them to just kind of relinquish power or to share it. You understand? Or relinquish control. So it will be a little different. I mean, I don't know.
We'll ready to share power,
but it's coming, but it will be back because people miss it. And then you see that even from the response to the film Ma Rainey, as people are looking, oh my God, theater, how much I miss theater. Watching a movie, they're going, how much I miss theater.
And the prom, you're getting people like me who would be like, Ryan Murphy, how dare you, to be like, wow, this really does make me miss theater. But at the same time, like, yes, this change is important, but there's a school of thought where it's like, you don't come between a man and his paper. And, it's literally like what Chappelle said, the industry is a monster. The same monster the Me Too people were talking about, and they hate the monster for how it fucks, but he hates it for how it eats. Same monster.
Monster. It's true. Same monster. So we'll see. We'll we shall see. The monster is quite resilient.
Mhm.
The monster is quite resilient. So we shall see.
Yeah, I'm hopeful though, and thank you so much for coming on, man. I
My
really
pleasure.
appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Keith.